cosmos. On this grand stage, man fancies himself an actor. He is but vermin groveling beneath the floorboards. It's a rigged game. There are ways of ascension for those unburdened by childish notions of morality. But I've bent the rules before. This time, I will see them break.
Hiya everyone, it's your local ghost girl. This is probably my most ambitious video to date, so please show as much love and support as you can. I'll be covering the lore of Madshot extensively. Please note that some parts will include a bit of theory crafting and speculation in order to fill in the gaps and holes that may be present. One more thing is that not everything contains a codex entry, the most notable being the side bosses, so those I will be skipping over, unless there is a good reason for me to include them in this video. One more disclaimer is that I will not be including any information from the inspiration of this game, which would be Lovecraft's books. This is going to be a long one, so buckle up and strap in. This video can be watched with visuals, but is also safe to watch in an audio format. Grab a drink and let's get started. Mr. C is our main protagonist and is an aristocrat that has seemingly lost his memory. It's unknown how long he's lost his memory for and how old he is. Mr. C fought in the Arcan War prior to losing his memory and was a high-ranking officer within the military that he served under. It's noted that he defended against assaults by Redcoat invaders. He's married to Lady Marianne of Deep Waters, whom, as her name suggests, loved the sea surrounding her. She spent many of her days painting, trying to forget the darkness that lurked at the edges of her memory. Marianne suffered from visions of the old ones through nightmares as they spoke of the world soon coming to an end. Her story is not a happy one, as she eventually passed away after becoming more sickly with each failed conception, thus driving Mr. C into a downward spiral as he blamed the old gods and their accursed visions for Marianne's diminishing health. A vision from another place racks Mr. C's mind as he's transported to a plane beyond his comprehension. In front of him is a cloaked entity which leans down to offer him a deal. If Mr. C were to successfully kill the Great Old Ones, the Yellow King will return Marianne to him. Warily, Mr. C accepts this offer as he's desperate to bring his wife back to life. Still, a part of Mr. C despises the Yellow King, for he too is part of the occult. Before sending off the man, a name flashes through his mind: Hastur. The story begins in the manor, the first place that Mr. C awakens in. Here, he finds a pair of guns, a table with occult markings, and a statue of the god he has made a pact with. Paying no immediate heed to it, he continues forward, exploring the mansion before he finds a familiar painting hanging up on the wall near the fireplace. A face flashes through his mind: Marianne. She was the one who painted all of this. She was the one who painted them together. But she's gone now. He remembers the very day that he lost her, and Mr. C is determined to bring her back, or at the very least, avenge her death. There's a strange man further up the corridor. A man that Mr. C recalls was a butler for his family. He was around for as long as Mr. C could remember. Niles Edward Chesterton is his personal butler now, with Mr. C's family no longer being around. Old Niles is proficient in many things, including the arcane arts and the occult. Mr. C surmised that Niles had a plan for him to follow in Niles' footsteps. He had no proof, however, though a gut feeling says otherwise. Strangely enough, Niles had always seemed to be old, even when Mr. C was still a child. Whenever he tried to ask Niles about his knowledge of cults, potion brewing, and various rites, Mr. C seemed to always forget. Still, under Niles' tutelage and Blackport's study, Mr. C was able to gain a profound amount of information about the Celestials and what lay beyond. Whether conjured by the god itself or with Niles' guidance, he didn't care. Mr. C knew that it was beneficial to have a place to worship and venerate the god in order to reap the benefits of such an entity. The marshlands are the first hostile area that Mr. C encounters upon opening the rift. Here are the ruins of an amphibious civilization that eventually were wiped out upon the rise of early human civilizations. Recently, however, the marshlands have become the grounds for the Arkan War, with many of the structures made for the war still being found scattered about. The marshlands are characterized by mainly broken down buildings, wooden ports, and ruins near the edges of water. Many types of enemies can be encountered here, with the most common being the resurrected. These zombie-like creatures have been brought back from the dead as a result of the void. They pose little threat by themselves, but can be immensely dangerous if they're left to create a horde. The resurrected are all types of people, but share one trait in common. They are all dead with their corpses now left shambling about. It is noted that some are citizens of Blackport, the same place that the Redcoats waged war with. The second type of enemy can be categorized as a type of resurrected. Conscripts are elite resurrected and can hold shields. Shields reduce the amount of damage taken from one direction and can be used to charge at enemies quickly. Conscripts are notably all Redcoats, thus all of them are more durable and have a higher threat level than the average resurrected. Conscripts have only one thing on their mind: kill enemies and engage in another war with Blackport. Residue, on the other hand, is the equivalent of a slime. They're green and very squishy, but don't let them fool you. Once defeated, they will split, spawning two smaller pieces of residue that will attempt to attack Mr. C. Not much is known about this creature, outside of the fact that it may come from a creature of larger origin. Then there are the bat-winged devils, also known as bat rats. These animalistic vermin originate from the bat-rat brood. They attack in groups and are much more lethal when doing so. These creatures are completely blind, however they have a strong sense of hearing. Mr. C is able to finally reach the ends of the marshlands, but as he's about to proceed into the clearing towards the city of Blackport, he is attacked by an odd creature. Interestingly enough, there is two ways the scenario can play out. This is the only point in the game where there are two scenarios. Mr. C can encounter either the Bog Beast or Edward Hutchinson. Every other section has one final boss. However, this one has two. The Bog Beast's origin are unknown, like many of the creatures within this game. Speculation has it, however, that it was birthed from a falling star. This falling star crashed to the ground, right near the coast of Black Bay, in between where the slums are divided from the marshlands. Eventually, abnormal creatures and vegetation began to pop up. All of these creatures had been born with no eyes and were deformed in some way as a result of the star's remnants. As these creatures died and their bodies piled up alongside decomposing plants, the void's rift opened up. As a result of Mr. C opening up the rift, he had unleashed the first big horror that he had to face in battle. Alternatively, Mr. C could stumble upon or be teleported to Edward Hutchinson's mansion at the very heart of the marshlands. Here, Edward had stowed himself away after being one of the last scientists expelled from Blackport University for inhumane experiments. His age is unknown, but it can be inferred that he is elderly, due to his white hair. As a result of his experiments, Edward unleashed monsters of all kinds and lets them run free within the swamps near his abode. Rumors theorize that he was a necromancer, and that he is far older than he lets on. Many believed he had found a way to extend his life nearly past the late 19th century. Whether or not this is true is of no concern to Mr. C. All Mr. C knows is that this man has the ability to raise the dead and that he stands in his way. After killing Edward Hutchinson, Mr. C is teleported to a strange place, a place surrounded in a never-ending violet sky permeating through both the ground and the air. Little is known about the Mind Palace. Mr. C has been the first person here in centuries. There is a strange black creature that waves him over with one of its many hands. It has no name, and it cannot speak. Instead, it offers to trade one of the many alterations Mr. C has for something that a man like him could understand: gold. He declines this offer, but keeps it in the back of his mind. Perhaps he'll be back here sooner than he would have thought. Up ahead is a fountain full of blood. As Mr. C bends down to take a sip, the fountain completely disappears, and he feels much stronger than before. All of the cuts and bruises on his body were no longer there. Taking it as a blessing, he enters a red rift up ahead, ready to take on the next challenge that awaits him. The slums, otherwise known as the slums of Blackport, are connected to the coastline of the city. It was here that the city was first founded, and it is here that ancient ruins lay far beneath the surface above. Here, exotic and unusual cargo trade hands underneath the dim light of the city. But not everything is as it seems. There are deceitful individuals here, waiting to get their hands on the latest riches, even if it means soiling their hands to do so. Among the ports of the city and the sewers underneath lay creatures such as the leng spider. The leng spiders are known for being able to give birth at extremely quick rates, as they use their offspring to attack and ward off predators. Mothers themselves are quick and nimble on their legs, being able to evade enemy attacks if needed. As noted by Mr. C, they were only ever seen in the void, but with the void now ripped apart, they are able to populate the earth with their versatile adaptation. Eugothian ascocarps are the infant stage of Eugothian fungi. Although it's a type of vegetation, it has the ability to move around as it pleases by burrowing into the ground. Eugothian fungi, on the other hand, are able to move around freely, as they contain leg-like appendages. It has multiple defensive mechanisms that is resistant to attacks and the capacity to spit acid. Not only are they everywhere in the slums, but they'll also appear in the marshlands. Barnacles are also native to the Blackport area. It's unknown if they came from the void or if they simply mutated due to the void's presence. Mr. C theorizes that they most likely came from the deep oceans and had their physical manifestations amplified as a result of the void. These crustaceans are able to use a tongue-like organ to pull unaware prey up to their mouths. Tentacles are another enigmatic creature. That is, if you can call them that. They may originate from some unknown creature or be a living thing of their own. However, we cannot be certain of either theory. They are able to block off passages, or grab onto their prey and pull it back into the void with them. Like the barnacles, the deep ones are fishmen that once lived in elegant cities below the ocean waves. Deep ones are able to charge at enemies quickly to take them down. These creatures are able to tear off a human's head as well as breed with them, if they so wish. They are said to have been born from Father Dagon and Mother Hydra, two beings that Mr. C never encounters on his way to slay Cthulhu. An interesting note is that in one of the prayer rooms, the option to worship Dagon is available. Upon praying to him, you lose HP and get a prompt of text that states he is a false god. Is he a false god? Or is he simply not your god? The final creature that finds itself inhabiting the slums of Blackport are Galaki slugs. These yellow creatures are slow, but in return are able to leave behind a yellow trail of sludge that can damage and dissolve enemies. Additionally, they are able to jump far distances in order to chase after anything it deems as food. Like many of the other creatures that find themselves appearing near Blackport, it's inferred that they come from an animal much larger than them. As Mr. C traveled through the eerily quiet and dirty, disrepaired slums, he accidentally falls through a sewer drain. For some reason, it seemed unending as he finally landed on his back, unharmed. Upon gazing upwards, Mr. C finds an extremely large creature, only known in legend as a Chthonian. Chthonians, as their name suggests, emerged from Cthulhu. It was only with the opening of the Void Rift, however, that they were able to make their way downward into the Earth's surface. Here, they make their nests near the Earth's core, being able to sustain an unreasonably high amount of heat due to their layer of mucus. Curiously enough, this particular Chthonian was found near the Black Bay, despite the Chthonians possessing an abhorrent weakness to moisture. Again, Mr. C slays this creature in its breeding ground after an intense fight with it. The creature will relentlessly spawn mini Chthonians to hopefully carry on its bloodline, but the man makes sure to kill every last one before ascending towards Midtown. Midtown is known as the heart of Blackport. Statues are littered about the place. A city once full of life is now deathly quiet after the invasion of the Void. Madness and decay fill each turn and bend. The people here are no longer human. Now they're simply bloodthirsty beasts attempting to take down and rip apart any living being that they can find within their vicinity. Amazingly enough, there are still a few survivors that have yet to flee the city. For what reason? Mr. C could never fathom. Perhaps riches and treasures lay galore now that there are few citizens to lay claim to them. As Mr. C ascends further and further through the city streets, he sees a large, bulbous figure off in the distance. He can't make out what it is, but it seems like it's floating closer and closer to him. As it gets closer, Mr. C catches a whiff of the wretched stench of death and sulfur coming from the creature. His eyes widen as his eyes are cast upon the wretched creature. It was once human. It was once a citizen of Blackport. The bloaters have large bulges on the back of where their spines once were. Their backs are hunched over with the bloating on their backs nearly consuming what is left of their faces. These humans no longer have legs, only long, outstretched hands. The bloater gets closer to Mr. C before abruptly lurching and rupturing, blowing up and spraying acid outwards from where it once stood. Mr. C rolls out of the way, not needing to land a single bullet on the creature. Perhaps there is still a bit of humanity left within the monster. Perhaps that is why they are so quick to kill themselves. It wasn't long before Mr. C encountered another creature, this time more monstrous than the last. Its limbs are twisted at the joints. Large, jagged teeth protruded from its jaws, and its ribcage bursted out of its body. He could tell from their clothes and from the district he's in that they were once a middle-class native of the area. The beast roars in torment as it charges at him recklessly, slashing with the bones that jutted out of its body. As Mr. C dispatches it with a bullet, he notes that he should avoid its corpse, as stepping on it could prove quite hazardous. If the bloaters were the lower class, and the misshapen were the middle class, then what had happened to the upper class? It wouldn't take long for Mr. C's question to be answered as the skies began to fill with aristocrats. The aristocrats were now above the other citizens, in more ways than one. After all, they were granted the ability of flight, and from their chests, a fleshy limb sticks outwards to catch anyone foolish enough to be caught in their sights. The whispers of people long gone filled Mr. C's ears now. A voice of a priest rang out in a chant much louder than the quiet murmurs of the damned. He recognized it as Saint Dominicus of Olmsted. The thoughtless priest had prayed to a false god, a being beyond his comprehension. You'll notice that in Midtown there is a statue of a headless man riding a horse. Keep note of this, as we'll revisit this point later. From the dead of night, a fallen angel with tattered, inky wings descended upon Midtown. The force of its wings left deep grooves within the ground as the creature blinked back and forth at speeds no human could imagine. It had clearly come from beyond this world, maybe even beyond the void itself. The Bayaki had no observable goals. Maybe it wanted to consume all in its path for its next journey. Maybe it simply wanted to watch this world descend into madness and let itself aid in the unraveling of society. Whatever is left of the people here know that its call meant certain death. As it surveys Midtown from above the rooftops, Mr. C knew that it was just one more creature standing in his path. As Mr. C continued out of Midtown by jumping through the now somewhat secure rooftops, he spotted a large structure up ahead. It was covered in shadow as the sun began to rise once more. This building was most likely the famed Blackport University that he had heard so much about prior to opening the Void's Rift. The people here were much like Edward Hutchinson, albeit a bit more toned down and disciplined. They were said to have researched the stars and the extraterrestrials through conduction of electricity. Here, only the top 1% were allowed to reside. Not even the wealthy aristocrats could step foot within the Citadel's district. As he ascended, the more Mr. C realized he was wrong. Another building much taller than the university towered over Blackport. At its peak is the Cathedral of Long Shadows. It had been here from before the Dark Ages and was miraculously able to survive the Arcan War. Below the cathedral laid more mysteries, shrouded by rumors and ghost stories. It is said that in these very catacombs laid those who swore their life to the covenant of the Mother. When it was their time to die, the loyal followers were caged, not allowed to pass on. Here was their final resting place, doomed to eternally suffer. The situation was much worse than Mr. C had anticipated, and it could only get worse from here on out, unless he did something about it. As if reading his thoughts, 3 more strange beings phased into visibility. 2 of them were clearly from the same kind of sect. The Covenant Hierophant clearly served some other higher being, a higher being that didn't belong to Cthulhu. Although there were not many of them, it quickly dawned that there was no need for more Hierophants. After all, their magic was extremely potent in being able to protect the other monstrosities now roaming Blackport's Midtown. As Mr. C landed a fatal blow onto one of them, the Covenant Hierophant flickers a bit before combusting. The resulting shockwave threw Mr. C backwards onto the ground, leaving him breathless for the first time since ascending to the Citadel. Unfortunately, the Covenant Hierophants were the least of Mr. C's concerns. While they had a host of defensive abilities, the Covenant Cardinals have conceded themselves to their divine entity, thus enhancing their offensive capabilities much more. While opening rifts, their bodies are vulnerable to attack, but they themselves can also attack from unconventional angles. The final freakish mutant could only be described as a writhing mass. Mainly comprised of wriggling tentacles, the writhing mass levitates towards their prey in a more accelerated fashion than one would assume. It's unknown where they came from, but it can be assumed that it hails from a god unknown to mankind. As Mr. C fought off the onslaught of the hordes, he's able to finally flee and lock himself inside of the famed cathedral. A high-pitched but low-sounding shriek pierces his ears from further inside. Although exhausted, he knew that he had to be ready for a fight. An alien-like creature was drifting near the front of the church, near where the podium stood. This monster, whatever it was most likely the thing that had been trapped underneath the cathedral for so long. The cult that followed this false goddess most likely woke her up from her long slumber to seize control of Blackport amidst the chaos the void was spreading. Even a commoner could see that the Coven Mother possessed power beyond the realm of this world. Through arcane rites and malicious rituals, she was able to gain more power unnaturally. Despite being once human, now she was nothing but a shell of her former self, and Mr. C did what he did best: kill monsters.
There was only one gate into that towering apocalypse. And it stood open. Without hesitation, I made my descent. Even in that putrid abyss, I would continue my crusade.
As the Coven Mother's body disintegrated, Mr. C found himself walking towards the top of the cathedral. Here he was able to shoot a hole into the gigantic monster above, climbing into its stomach. He may have also wound up here after being consumed willingly. One way or another, Mr. C was able to successfully climb to this level without dying. Here, we'll see that there is a familiar headless statue in some of the level's areas. A headless statue that we have seen in a previous area. We can infer that it was most likely Mr. C as he served in the Arcan War. The missing head also symbolizes what Mr. C is now. What he hated most. It is explicitly stated that the gut is the insides of Cthulhu himself. Cthulhu cannot feel anything, as he is in a comatose state at this point in time. There is no logic, no reason to this place. No knowledge of any type of body would lead to the way out. And Mr. C certainly did not want to think of what would happen to him should he find himself lost in this endless abyss. Various strange creatures can be found here, all of which are aggressive in nature. The carcinoma is the most common as it grows from inside of the Great Old One itself. Despite its bulbous and heavy appearance, the carcinoma can strike with lightning-fast speed, taking prey by surprise. Carcinomas are not known to attack in groups, but will sometimes work together to take down larger targets. They can spread diseases, though special relics may be able to offset any sort of illnesses contracted from carcinomas. Interestingly enough, carcinomas are exactly what their name suggests: cancer cells, albeit amplified in size by 1,000. As Mr. C delved deeper into the body of Cthulhu, he's able to find a weird infestation at the epicenter. The thing dubbed Oculus by Mr. C is seemingly a creature of some sort with multiple major organs. Many optical endings serve to spectate and survey its surroundings in order to make sure that its hiding place is not accidentally stumbled upon. And if it wasn't Mr. C's lucky day, perhaps he never would have found this spot to begin with. After climbing out of Cthulhu's body, Mr. C enters a sanctuary of some kind. It exists outside of space-time, unable to be found by any regular human means. R'lyeh somehow exists both under the sea and above the sky, leading to an enigmatic existence. What kind of race once stood here is long gone. Although there are no corpses strewn about, the city is too eerily quiet to be a safe haven. A word blinks through his mind once more: Shoggoths. Whatever that means, Mr. C would find out soon. An elder spore approaches Mr. C and attacks. It wouldn't take long for it to be put into the ground once more. These pieces of sentient vegetation are no longer capable of space flight after losing their wings, but they are still capable of swift diving to ward off intruders. A creature spies on the man with its multicolored eyes. You can tell by looking at it that this monster has survived for eons. The appendages of the creature are able to stick to any wall and surface. Along with the ability to grab onto walls, ceilings, and floors, it is able to regenerate its limbs at will. Sometimes, it will even detach parts of itself in order to grow new ones. Combined with regeneration and the freedom of movement, the abyssal echinoderm's eyes are able to combust after releasing it from its socket in order to violently assault enemies. Just as Mr. C thought he was finally in the clear, Shoggoth bursts out from the wall next to him. Shoggoth's creation is the culmination of slave labor that raised R'lyeh to the skies. When the individual Shoggoths revolted and protested against the unknown, highly technological race, they were merged into this being of terrible comprehension. Whatever happened to their masters is a mystery, and what Shoggoth's intentions now are, remain a secret. And to its grave will that secret die. Mr. C had finally reached it, the place that had started this reckoning in the first place. The void is an indescribable place of nothingness. Dimensional portals open up here and smash worlds into one another constantly. Creatures may crawl in and out of this place at random times, despite time not being a factor here. The Sage of the Void are abundant in this area. They possess no eyes and no legs. Their only limbs are their elongated arms. These creatures are speculated to have large heads due to all of the knowledge that they contain. Yet, they have no mouths to communicate it to any other creatures aside from themselves. Mr. C could feel it now. Cthulhu was near. The void is where Cthulhu resided in. He is one of the great old ones, residing in a death-like state of hibernation. That is, until Mr. C reopened the void, causing it to spill towards the world beneath. Mr. C is blinded by vengeance as he allows the creatures of the void to do as they please. He only cares about one thing now, Marianne. And to do that, he must kill Cthulhu and all of his spawn until Hastur is satisfied enough to bring her back to life. He sprints towards the finish line, killing whatever abominations that dared to stand in his path. Eventually, he makes it to Cthulhu, who is very much alive, despite Mr. C having traversed through the god's stomach a few hours prior. The two duke it out, taking shots at each other and trading blow for blow. As they fight, Cthulhu seems to morph and change into different versions of himself, that of a man and that of a god. After what feels like an eternity, Mr. C is able to land a killing blow, felling the gigantic creature. After finally finishing off Cthulhu, Mr. C had managed to realize one thing. He had been tricked. By Hastur? By a greater being? He was going to find out.
Is the chain broken? Am I liberated from the ruin I have wrought? No. In the pantheon of madness, there is always a greater horror. It's a rigged game.
Not much is known about Patricia Asenath. It is said that her shop once belonged to an old lover of hers, and that not once had her humble storefront experienced loss. She is a woman with kraken tentacles for legs that originated from a small island across the southern seas. It's unknown whether she was born with them or acquired them through other means. As with all things in Madshot, rumor has it that she may have made a deal with evil forces in order for her shop to succeed. Though these forces could have simply manifested themselves as worship towards the all-powerful Old Ones. It's strange, for as successful as her business is, people tend to have trouble finding it, almost as if the shop moved around or was never there to begin with. So, what's my theory? Could Mr. C have been a worshipper of Cthulhu? There are various secret side levels that can be accessed by the player. A few names or symbols are displayed on banners below candles. If you pick anything but Cthulhu, you'll lose 10 HP without gaining anything. However, if you choose to worship the correct god, you'll be rewarded with powers. Despite this, I don't believe that Mr. C worships Cthulhu out of belief, but rather out of necessity in order to slay the creatures he so desperately hates, and that includes Cthulhu himself. In Cthulhu's Codex entry, it is noted that the words are written with Mr. C's seething hatred. He loathes the creature that's known in his world as an old god, believing that Cthulhu was nothing but an abomination that must die. Additionally, in the ending cutscene after Cthulhu's death, it's shown that there are bigger creatures out there than Cthulhu. These creatures could have come from Hastur himself, but not that much is revealed about this mysterious god entity. The revolvers is a pair of dual weapons used for both a mix of precision and damage. They were manufactured by the company Smith & Ashton sometime before the Arkan War. These bad boys are mainly seen equipped by the Blackport military, as during the Arkan War, there was a boom in business. The revolvers were the most popular weapon on the market, and for good reason. Their range damage, reload times, and precision are outclassed by any other type of handgun on the market at the time. Similar in design, but manufactured 4 years after the revolvers, are the repeaters. They are made by a different company named the Block Company. In contrast to the ever-exploding popularity of the revolvers, the Block Company managed to carve out a niche for themselves. These guns sacrifice what the revolvers are best known for, accuracy and damage, for a blazing rate of fire. The oldest out of the 3 primary ranged weapons is the Regulator. The Derleth brand are the manufacturers for this heavy gun, and it is equally as popular as the revolvers. However, unlike the revolvers, the Regulator is often referred to as the reason why the Arkan War was won. The design of the revolvers were most likely inspired by the Regulator, as this gun boasts high penetration power, sacrificing a fast rate of fire for pure damage. Rapid fire is possible, but will drastically lower the effective firing power of this gun. Additionally, the Derleth brand optimized the gun in a way that makes it suitable for customization in preparation for any foe, flesh or otherwise, that the holder may encounter. The Nick is one of the only primary melee weapons that exists. It is similar in weight to that of a greatsword, but is able to be swung with the agility of a normal sword. It was crafted by Mira, a legendary but mysterious blacksmith that we know little information about. The Nick is one of Mr. C's family heirlooms, so it can be safely assumed that there are no other swords like it out there. The final primary weapon in Mr. C's arsenal is the Shield Blade. This weapon is equipped with both offensive and defensive capabilities. Unlike every other weapon, it was not forged or manufactured. Instead, it is a mysterious artifact, if you can even call it that originated from the void. As with all things that come from the void, it has a sort of sentience. It's able to be flung for offensive damage, but can hug onto the wielder to defend them from damage as well. Additionally, if flung, the sword will always return to where it was flung from, in this case, Mr. C's arm. Originating from the slums of Blackport is the Cleaver. It was most commonly used to cut down whale meat, but is a great heavy weapon. After the end of the Arkan War, those that needed to defend themselves would often find the Cleaver within their possession and possible arsenal of weapons. One slash from the Cleaver can be massively devastating. The Eye of Cthulhu originates from the Void. However, it is unknown if this eye is from the Cthulhu that Mr. C slays. In fact, the very presence of this item indicates that there are many more Cthulhus out there and that the one we killed is but the first of many. A beam of power shoots out from the eye, damaging all in its path. Additionally, it may break the minds of those that stare into its pupil for an extended amount of time. It is speculated that the frozen daggers we encounter are made from a race of creatures outside of our own. Whoever seemed to have crafted these are long gone. They may seem fragile, but their masterful craftsmanship says otherwise. These daggers have many ways of being used, but it is indicated that they were made to be thrown as ranged objects. Living up to its name, these are able to slow down or fully freeze enemies whose skin it manages to pierce. Like the frozen daggers, the cursed kunai are meant to be used as throwing weapons. Unlike the frozen daggers, however, they lack utility and are instead equipped for longer ranged wielding. The cursed kunai are often attached at the hip to sailors from distant lands beyond the Orient. Precision rifles are related to the Regulators both in brand and usage. They are from the Derleth brand, but was discontinued for unknown reasons. Speculation has it that it was because of an unknown thief who stole the original designs, forcing the brand to halt production indefinitely. Like the Regulators, they are meant to shoot at a slow rate, trading rate of fire for power. One shot is easily enough to end an enemy, or multiple. Its bullets are hard, fast, and difficult to avoid. The Stormblade is a false name for the secondary armament, as it is a lightning rod. It comes from the top of the spires of one of the buildings near Blackport University and can be charged up to unleash a deadly electric current to those standing nearby. Its genesis is also largely a mystery, as nobody knows what the purpose of the experiments were. Some think it's to find out a way to properly wield the elements. Others believe that the scientists wanted to simply see if electricity could be used to advance society, and few others know that it was a way to bring about a new god, regardless of whether they are merciful or cruel. The Winged Blade is not its true name. The name of this weapon has been lost to time, with few others knowing of its grandiose history. The Winged Blade was once used by an ancient champion that stood over the city of Blackport. It was carved to be able to inflict the maximum amount of damage on a target. It contains both a sharp edge and jagged end that allows it to tear through flesh swiftly and perfectly. Skilled users of the Winged Blade are able to swing it in a full circle, hitting as many foes as possible. Little is known about the womb staff, but one thing is certain, it is organic. Whether it comes from the void or an alien race is unknown, but it was definitely not made with human hands. The womb staff is able to birth and spit out winged bats that protect its host until they die. This staff is adorned at the very top with a functional uterus of a bat-winged devil. Finally, the last secondary sidearm that Mr. C may come across is the chakram. The chakram was made in the Orient, but was brought to Blackport by accident. It's a sort of throwing weapon that is able to return to its wielder after it has been thrown. There are a few notable locations mentioned within Madshot, but without further information, I can't provide much on their histories or origins. Still, I managed to condense whatever information I could find to add additional context to the universe of Madshot. I will not be including, however, the secret levels of the game, as they are just mechanics to spice up the gameplay. First is the space in which secondary armaments are acquired. From first inspection, it seems to be somewhere within the stomach of Cthulhu. Next is the River Styx. The River Styx is part of this universe, as the sea is described as having Stygian depths levels of water. The River Styx is most notably part of Roman and Greek mythology and refers to the river that the boatman, Charon, travels on. With Charon, dead souls are ferried off towards the land of the dead. Another location is the Plateau of Lang, where Lang spiders originate from. Within the description of the item, Frozen Dagger, we learn that the plateau is referred to as a waste. The Plateau of Lang is part of the void, as noted under the Lang spider's description. Father Dagon and Mother Hydra are two godlike entities. They're often referred to as false gods, and they are the ones that birthed the deep ones. Another pretty obvious location is the Black Bay. The Black Bay can be assumed to be the bay surrounding the city of Blackport. Another place that is referred to are the lands beyond the Orient, though other details about where the Orient lies are a mystery. It can be inferred from the name that the Orient is the equivalent to any Asian country present in our world. Last is the Glacial Period. The Glacial Period is, well, the last ice age. It takes place before the dawn of the Dark Ages, but not much is known about the Glacial Period. The Dark Ages could be surmised as the time during this world's equivalent of Victorian London. And that's all I have for you folks. Thank you for watching. This video took a lot of work and research. If you enjoyed it, please do leave a sub, a like, and a comment. It means the world to me, and thank you for watching. Until next time.
Just go.